Hi everybody, welcome to BVD's Escape 2023. My name is Werner de Jager. I head up the Cloud Managed Service Division within BVD, and I'm joined today by Chris van Wyk, Partner Enablement Manager at Amazon Web Services. And today we are going to be talking about a topic that's very core to both of us, and that is continuous learning. We're very fortunate to be speaking about this at BVD's Escape purely because of the focus that the conference has on learning trends and technologies. Everybody has a slightly different view of what learning is and how that works. It's often thought of as a once-off, formal, classroom-led training, but the landscape has changed so much since Chris and I started our careers, and the formal learning versus experience-based learning gap has almost become a gray area with the commoditization of learning. From a corporate perspective, the focus on learning has grown exponentially, and a lot of value is placed on this. The opportunities that companies offer in terms of learning to their employees has become a huge area of focus. Learning is almost always an aspirational thing. You're either planning for your future, you're investing in yourself, or you see a colleague, friend, a team lead, and you want to see yourself in that position. Perhaps there's a project that you want to get involved in or work on. And I think the desire to learn always comes down to a desire to change. And very often you don't know where to start. So Chris and I are going to be talking about how we've used continuous learning throughout our own lives for success, and what qualifies us to be speaking to you today? Absolutely nothing. Chris, can you tell us a bit about your life and your journey?
Yeah, so Chris van Wyk, Partner Enablement Manager at Amazon Web Services, like Werner mentioned. I want to go back a long time ago to 2001, where I matriculated, and my dad actually wanted me to go into engineering, where I didn't see myself actually studying for that long. I just wanted to get into the field, get my hands dirty, so I took the approach of doing 2 one-year diplomas instead, and straight after my dad was like, so now you're going to do your degree? And I'm like, no, I'm going to start working. So he said, you've got a month to find a job, and that was it. And jumped into the workforce straight away. I worked in different roles, from desktop support into IT management, even post-production. And then I landed myself in 2010 at Vodacom, where things got quite interesting in terms of continuous learning. So before Vodacom, it was basically pretty much I did my diplomas and that was it, and I kind of just had the hands-on experience, and that's where I kind of then got my next job. When I got to Vodacom, it was different in the sense that I got exposure to things, but then people started saying, what qualifications do I have? What certifications do I have? And that actually started becoming a bit of a barrier for me in terms of progressing my career. So I kind of stagnated then for a couple of years because I just kind of became complacent. I didn't realize the actual true value of continuous learning. And it was roughly about 7 years ago, I was like, no, I want to grow. Like, I have goals. I want to grow my career. We all have life ambitions, right? We want to have this house, we want to have kids, and it kind of takes money, and I knew I had to grow my career in order to get there. And that's where then, like, the whole, it happened to be AWS side of things, I started exploring myself in that area because it was a big topic within the business back then. And I actually then went from a tech role into business. And that position was a product manager So they saw the value of a tech person transitioning into business because of they saw it as easier for a technical person to learn business acumen than the other way around. And I just literally went straight into it. I had a great line manager who then also said, well, now we need to think about like your next step in your career. What is it that you will need in order to like now be promoted? So that's where then I started with studying my BCom business management. In parallel, I was like, well, I need to kind of lead by example with this whole cloud thing. So what certifications should I be doing in order to also now guide the people that I'm saying, you should get certified? Well, it also started with me. So did some AWS certifications, and I think that's also where I learned like how much I love learning actually, and especially with the whole tech side of things. So even though I was in a business role, I kind of missed the tech side of things. So that's how I was able to kind of really be then closer to those technical people that I used to work with so often, was sitting down with them, hearing like where they want to go. So even though I wasn't their line manager, I was having those conversations like where do you see yourself? Like how can I support now as a business stakeholder that can now support you in like your skills transformation? And then the beginning of last year, the interesting aspect comes now with continuous learning is life, our dear friend life. So found out I was having a child, wife fell pregnant, and then you have the aspect of seeing even further down the line, like are you happy where you are, where's your career, and saw this job available that I'm in now, reached out to the line manager, said I know what you do, go through the whole formal process, and I got into a role that I was super passionate about, but I didn't actually realize like my full potential. So what I mean by that is that I only saw myself maybe being able to apply for the job in a year or two's time, because I thought I needed to have more for the likes of joining like a hyperscaler company. And it turned out that they really saw the value. And I think this is also going back to my previous roles. If you're around people within the business, whether you are training, but more importantly also then getting the hands-on experience, being uncomfortable, because that's what continuous learning is about, is that you need to sometimes get uncomfortable where it's like, I actually don't know, but maybe you can help me. So get into those scenarios, working till crazy hours of the nights, starting early in the mornings. Those are the sort of things where maybe if you say, like, how do I get there? Sometimes it takes sacrifice. Whether it's financial or time, you're going to have to sacrifice in some form or way. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey up to today, is just seeing what it takes in order to maneuver and keep up with the up and coming trends. And I mean, maybe just to kind of close it off, is that even like what I do on a day-to-day basis, something small, right, is just going through LinkedIn, seeing what news is out there. Like that's continuous learning, keeping up to date with trends. You don't have to sit in a 3-day learning session in order to be continuously learning. It can be small size chunks, watching a little video, reading an article, but if you've got the time and the money or being supported, then obviously you can put in more time. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and that's part of the commoditization aspect of it, and how the landscape actually has changed, because the view used to be that learning is structured, and with, I mean, you can find anything on the internet.
Nice, yeah.
at the drop of a hat.
Our dear friend Google.
Yeah. So obviously being an enablement partner or enablement manager for companies, what are some of the challenges that you see with getting people to embrace learning?
So I think taking the step back of where things were like 10 to 15 years ago, was that like learning was pretty much limited to almost like special people. There was only select people that got access to like this learning, and you kind of sat back there like I wish I was that person. Now things have changed so much, where you have all of these technology companies that are investing in people. They've like realized that you can't just have a select few of people that are learning this. You have to reach actually as many people as possible in order to make things move and evangelize. So the problem that, well, myself, that I'm seeing is that firstly, there's actually maybe too much that's available. So because there's too much available, now there's not enough people almost. So going into the second point of that, because there's now so much available, people are now actually not finding time. So one of the big problems is time that I'm hearing from a lot of people saying, like, my company doesn't give me time, but then I'll be like, but then you have digital, you could probably do this at night, and it's like, no, but I got kids. So it's a slightly different aspect now, where it's no longer about the select few, but the people actually having time to actually do the training, especially the deeper stuff, right? So a lot of the cloud trainings that are out there today are anywhere between 3 to 5 days. So for a company to allow that person to go train for 3 to 5 days is not only a cost element, but time as well, because obviously a lot of people couldn't seem biddable during those hours. So yeah, the time aspect has probably been one of the biggest aspects in terms of really enabling more people to upskill and keep up with the technologies. So Werner, like, I'm seeing time as one of the barriers for enabling large-scale adoption and training of continuous learning. Maybe you can share some insights that you're seeing.
And so we have constant learning initiatives that we run, and what I've seen as a few obstacles is, besides time, we have scenarios where people don't know where to start. There's just so much out there that you don't necessarily know what is the best route to get to where you're going. Apart from that, is that people haven't necessarily been keeping up with tech, or they find it difficult to keep up with tech. And from that perspective, it's also sort of difficult to navigate where it is that you're going. And I think apart from time, those are the two biggest obstacles that I see. There's another aspect that comes into it sometimes, that it's a chicken and egg situation in some cases, that people don't necessarily want to train and then not be able to get into the position that they're aiming for, or they get put into a position expected to grow and develop into it, but they don't have the skills necessarily to do that. So there's always a situation where the one will come before the other, and you sort of have to adapt to it. We are fortunate, though, to live in a self-service world. So if you just know where to look, finding the resources becomes a lot easier, and your journey to actually learning, developing to that point is simplified quite a lot. I think the biggest question is, how do we overcome these challenges as an individual or an organization?
So I think going back to the point of like how really available a lot of this stuff has become. I mean, I remember the days of having Encyclopedia Britannica, having to open it up or pop in the CD in order to search for stuff. Now, whether you're in front of your laptop or cell phone, you can just search and now there's ChatGPT even more. So I think in terms of how you access information, I think maybe knowing that you don't always have to use the likes of Google. I think this is also where people have become a bit disconnected because of technology, just like chatting to people. So a good example that I have is back in the day, I kept on having these challenges with legal documentation, and like waiting long. Now, instead of just leaving that and making it, because it's a legal situation, I was like, wait, how can I now better myself in this in order to maybe fast track this for my customers? So I just kind of read through the legal documentation and then put my own notes towards the legal team, and it completely shifted the conversation out with legal. So where legal was busy, they were saying, wait, Chris is actually making time to try and understand like what we have to deal with. And that's where I kind of also now learned, it's like, yes, you got Google's a good starting point, right, for everyone in terms of learning. But just going back to the basics of if you want to learn about something, just speaking to a person that's in that area and taking a shot at it, that's what can work. Well, it worked for me. So, with my legal example, I don't know, based on your career, if you face something similar where you had to have a conversation or learn something outside of your job in order to make things work better for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually the majority of my career thus far has been along those lines. Probably the biggest example that I can give is in my previous organization, there was a big focus from a vendor perspective on audits, software audits for customers to confirm license compliance. Software compliance is generally vague. The rules around compliance are generally vague, and for this reason, it's often difficult for companies to ascertain where they stand in terms of license compliance. And we had an incident with a customer that they required an internal audit in order to determine where they were, and we outsourced this to one of our partners. The partner wasn't able to deliver in time and had to shift focus onto another project before we could deliver the final product to the customer. And we had rescheduled then our presentation to the customer to the next week, and we had days to deliver. So in that time, we made the decision, doing it internally, and just based on the tidbits that I'd picked up, went to go research a bit more, find out how the licensing actually works, what are common pitfalls, and I did the analysis, and I built the report for them. We had gone through that process, determined what their shortfall was, and just because of how vague this thing is, there isn't really any formal training that you can do for it in the first place. It's all experience based. So fast-tracked through that, and once we had delivered the report, there was an actual formal audit kicked off with that customer, and turned out to be quite similar to what we had put together. So that was, to me, just a big eye opener that it's not all valuable skills are certification based. A lot of them are, and if I don't know how you feel about it, but if I could validate those learnings and actually get a certification for it, it would help me. It's something that I could put forward on my profile, but it's not all learning works that way, right?
100%. And I think that's the whole thing about continuous learning. It isn't just experience based or certification based. You actually have to kind of blend them both together in order to really impact yourself in terms of what you do and how you progress in your career, if that's your thing.
Yeah, and it's also not the certification it's not the end point either.
Yeah.
It's all of these things just add to your tool belt that you can use as you go through your career, as you go through life.
Yeah. No, life, yeah, 100%. So I think a big point that I hear, and I think what I'd like to hear from you, is the value of the cert and how you see it in the different sort of elements as a person.
As I said, if I could validate learning, any learning that I can validate is valuable to me. I see certifications as a great tool. It's a great enabler that you can use. It's a structured learning for the most part, and it helps you to fast track through that. It is, however, not it's not the be all and end all to have a certification. The experience counts equally as much.
And then in terms of maybe from a customer's aspect, what those certifications mean, because I think obviously a lot of the time the most important part, right, is the individual. What is the value of a certification? But we know that isn't the only aspect. You've got the customer and then the partners like yourselves. Like, what does that kind of look like then, from a value of a certification?
So from a customer perspective, it's absolutely the same thing. Customers need a way to benchmark a company or an individual's ability to deliver on their needs. With cloud, or what we're seeing in tech in general actually, is that it changes so rapidly that a lot of the things don't have experience that you could necessarily draw on. So with new tech that comes out, new services that come out in the cloud space, you might have experience in using that tech in different forms elsewhere, but not necessarily with the product as it's being offered from a vendor perspective. So when it comes to certification, that it gives customers a way to validate your basic level of understanding, bolstered then by your experience with other techs. From an employer or a partner perspective, we deliver these things to customers all the time, right? So it's up to us to ensure that we have the skills and that we have a profile to deliver to customers to prove that we have this. Customers generally, when we are engaging with them, will ask us to showcase our skills, either in the form of a POC or to prove that we have the certifications. I've come across almost no opportunities where it hasn't been a requirement to submit certifications or accreditations for the business, and that's achieved through empowering your people. So from that perspective, there's huge value for both customers and for partners in having people certified.
100%. So now an interesting one is, so I've got the certification, now what? Because I think we both hear that quite a bit. So they've got the certification, like what comes next, you normally see?
The biggest thing that I've seen in that is that you need to get involved. It's not necessarily a case of you've got the cert, now you can just become whatever the title is of your certification. You do the solutions architect training, you don't automatically become a solutions architect. You need to use the skill, you need to improve on the skill, and you need to apply it. So that's the biggest thing from my perspective, is get involved, find out what the initiatives are within your own organization. Find out what the opportunities are to further develop the skills that you have. What we find internally that works very well is to just open up a sandbox environment for anyone that is willing and able to play with these services to do it. You can't just go into a customer's environment and test there for the first time. So play around with the things as much as possible internally. We really encourage that. And I think it's also important that once you know what you're working towards, like you said, connect with people who are in that space. Align with the sort of people and initiatives that take you into where you want to go with your learning, with your career, with your life.
So what I'm hearing is that, like, I think there's so many options. It's up to the individual. I mean, if you take the scenario of reaching out to your colleagues, like, as an introvert, I used to be one, like, to now try and reach out to a person could be a challenge. So maybe just opening up an account could be an option. Understanding what the business has available, because like more and more we're seeing this, right? It's part of like the whole culture of continuous learning that companies want to actually have in place to drive culture, is having platforms to have this like knowledge sharing seamlessly. I think the only other thing that I think is additional, I touched on it slightly earlier, was like LinkedIn, following a LinkedIn group, staying up to date with trends, and additionally what I've seen happen over the last few years quite a bit is communities. So you have now like developer communities in Pretoria, in Johannesburg, in Cape Town now, that just knowing about it, and now you just need to make time, right? Like, cool, Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. If now you were going to go to the pub, now you're going to the pub with other developers and learning what they're doing and developing and keeping up with the trends. And this is how you also extend yourself in terms of community for future roles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, being connected with people, it's quite crucial to that, I feel. So after training and certification, I think a journey for like a new employer / graduate versus a more senior person that's been in the industry for 10 plus years can be quite a bit different. So from what I've seen, like for graduates, for example, like the continuous journey learning is actually just starting for them. So you kind of have to put very programmatic learning plans that's normally like blended learning. So where they'll have digital, where they'll have in-person training, where they'll have a hackathon, hands-on labs, all of these sort of things to make it more robust, because they almost need to be exposed to everything. So the more they're exposed to, the more that they can then figure out where they need to go. Compared to the more senior people, this is the interesting part, because I think this is, I don't know about you, but where I'm kind of going in my career is that, yes, I can keep on learning, but where it's getting cool is that it's more of now enabling that mentorship sort of approach. So like being able to now take my lessons learned and share that with the people that are newer to the market. But it's also reciprocal. So as you now mentoring, and this is just advice, right? So as you now more senior and more mentoring, you keep your mind open to these awesome minds that are coming into the world where they don't think the same as you. So now where it's like you're busy sharing with them, like this is cool to know and this is what I would do if I was you, be open-minded to hear from them. So it's that's what I see kind of happen quite a bit for the more senior people is mentor, but then also listen, because that will help you grow as an individual in terms of thinking, because what networking was 20 years ago compared to today has changed quite a bit and is changing even more day by day. So I don't know, maybe like if you could share like what you do inside of BBD and that side as basic things.
We have quite a structured grad program within the organization that actually does focus on exactly that that sort of guided approach. What we do from an MServe perspective, that's the unit that I'm in. We like to gamify the challenges that we have, because things are always changing. We need to develop as well. So what we would typically do is present the problem to our grads, to open it up to the community within BBD, and get solutions back. Have like you say, the hackathon approach to it, and see what comes out of it. There's usually great feedback, great ideas that often end up being our concept for the final product. Apart from that, we have a few communities within the organization to share ideas, share knowledge. You need to be able to tap into resource when you need it, and the easiest way to do that is to have an internal community, like-minded people wanting to support each other, wanting to mentor. We have usually, in projects that we do, we add juniors in wherever we can to help them to develop the skills that are being used in that project. And that all becomes sort of part of the general knowledge of the business, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, I love it. And I think this also goes back to like where we were in our roles back in the day. Like I almost now wish I was a techie again, because of like what's available to the people in the market. But yeah, I still love my job quite a bit. So, yeah. So I think we could continue to have this conversation for days. But what would you maybe recommend to everyone listening today that they should action in the next 24 hours to help with their continuous learning journeys?
There are three things that I would recommend The first being is to explore everything, explore your interests, find what it is that you want to do, then find people that can help you in this journey. Speak to them, let them share their experiences, and learn from that. The second thing would be to get involved. Find the resources within your business, the initiatives. If you have external initiatives that you could get involved in, do that. Get an account for yourself. If you're doing cloud things, try it out for yourself. Just try, explore, build. Always be building with these things. And the last thing is to find resources that can help you to train. And by this I mean to help guide your journey into your endpoint. If you're in BBD, the Hive is a great place to start. Speak to some of the teams internally as well. There are always initiatives happening. For everyone externally, we will share resources with you that you can check out and get the journey started for yourselves as well.